Captain Zara Chen stood on the bridge of the human warship Thunder's Edge, her weathered hands gripping the command console as the distress signal played for the third time. The message was broken, filled with static, but the desperation in the alien voice was unmistakable. "Help! Anyone! Korthak's Empire attacking! Civilians dying! Please!" Her first officer, Marcus Rodriguez, turned from his station. "Captain, the signal originated from the Volari system. That's over 40 light-years from our current position." "How old is the signal?" Chen asked, her jaw tight. "Based on the degradation pattern, approximately 3 weeks. The Volari are a peaceful species. They don't even have military vessels." Chen's eyes hardened. The Volari were one of the few alien species that had shown genuine kindness to humanity when they first ventured into space. While other races had mocked humans for evolving on a death world, a planet with extreme gravity, violent weather, and aggressive predators, the Volari had offered friendship without judgment. "Send a priority message to Earth Command," Chen ordered. "Tell them we've received a distress call from Volari Prime. Request immediate deployment of the Third Fleet." Rodriguez's eyes widened. "The entire Third Fleet? Captain, that's over 200 vessels. The Korthaks don't attack unless they're confident of total victory. If they're hitting Volari Prime, they've brought everything they have." Chen turned to her communications officer. "Lieutenant Kim, open a channel to all human vessels within 50 light-years." "Channel open, Captain." Chen straightened her uniform and spoke with the authority that came from 20 years of service. "This is Captain Chen of the Thunder's Edge. We have received a distress signal from Volari Prime. The Korthak's Empire is conducting an assault on civilian populations. The Volari have no military force to defend themselves. They are artists, scientists, and philosophers who welcomed humanity when others turned us away. Today we repay that kindness. All available vessels are requested to converge on these coordinates. We leave no one behind." The bridge fell silent for a moment before responses began flooding in. Mining vessels volunteered to serve as supply ships. Cargo haulers offered to evacuate refugees. Military patrols from 3 different sectors confirmed they were changing course. Even private merchant ships responded, their captains offering whatever help they could provide. Rodriguez pulled up a tactical display. "Captain, at maximum burn, we can reach Volari space in 36 hours. "Not fast enough." Chen activated the ship's intercom. "All hands, this is the captain. We're about to push our engines beyond recommended limits. I need everyone at their stations. Damage control teams, stand ready. We have friends in trouble and humans don't abandon friends." The Thunder's Edge surged forward, its engines glowing white-hot as they exceeded safe parameters. Throughout the ship, crew members worked with grim determination. They had all heard stories of the Korthak's Empire, a militaristic civilization that viewed weaker species as resources to be exploited. The Korthaks had made the mistake of raiding human colonies once. The response had been so swift and brutal that they now gave human space a wide berth. In the medical bay, Dr. Sarah Walsh prepared trauma stations. "I want every surgical suite ready for mass casualties. Break out the emergency blood synthesizers. If the Korthaks are attacking civilians, we're going to see injuries no civilized being should have to witness." Her medical team moved with practiced efficiency. Humans had learned battlefield medicine the hard way through thousands of years of conflict on Earth. That knowledge, born from humanity's violent past, would now serve to save innocent lives. Down in engineering, Chief Engineer Tom Muller pushed the ship's reactor to its limits. Sweat poured down his face as he manually adjusted power flows, keeping the engines from tearing themselves apart. "Come on, baby," he muttered to the ship. "I know it hurts, but we need everything you've got. People are counting on us." Warning lights flashed across his console, but Muller ignored them. Humans had a reputation throughout the galaxy for their insane engineering practices. While other species built with safety margins of 300%, humans regularly operated at the edge of catastrophic failure. It was reckless, dangerous, and exactly what was needed right now. On the tactical deck, Lieutenant Commander Lisa Park coordinated with incoming ships. The response was overwhelming. The Third Fleet was mobilizing in full, but they wouldn't stop there. The 5th and 7th Fleets were requesting permission to deploy. Colonial militias were forming up. Even the Mars Defense Force, typically forbidden from leaving the Sol system, was petitioning for emergency authorization to join the relief effort. "Commander, I'm getting reports from the frontier," her assistant reported. "The mining guilds are mobilizing. They're converting ore haulers into makeshift troop transports." Park smiled grimly. "Let them come. The Korthax want to prey on the defenseless. They're about to learn why Earth is classified as a death world." The hours crawled by as the Thunder's Edge raced through space. Chen remained on the bridge, refusing to rest. She reviewed every piece of data they had on the Korthax Empire. They were a reptilian species, evolved on a low-gravity world with abundant resources. They had never faced true hardship, never had to fight for survival against a hostile environment. Their military doctrine relied on overwhelming force against weaker opponents. "Captain," Kim called out, "I'm picking up fragments of communications from Valari space. It's not good. The Korthax have established orbital supremacy. They're conducting systematic bombardment of population centers." Chen's hands clenched into fists. "How many ships are with us so far?" 43 vessels confirmed on intercept course, another 67 en route but further out. The main fleet elements won't arrive for another 18 hours after us. "Then we hold until they arrive." Chen turned to Rodriguez. "I want battle stations in 4 hours. Run combat drills until then. If we're going in outnumbered, we're going in perfect." The crew of the Thunder's Edge threw themselves into preparations with an intensity that would have terrified most species. Humans had evolved on a world where hesitation meant death, where working together was the only way to survive. That evolutionary pressure had created a species capable of extraordinary feats when protecting their pack, and humanity had decided long ago that their pack included anyone who showed them kindness. In the mess hall, Marines checked their weapons and armor. Sergeant David Kim addressed his squad. "The Valari are pacifists. They don't even understand the concept of war. The Korthax are counting on that. They think they can waltz in and take whatever they want because no one will stop them. Well, guess what? Someone will stop them. We will stop them." His squad roared their approval. Each Marine wore powered armor that would have been impossible for most species to operate. The suits were designed for Earth gravity, 3 times what most civilized species considered normal. In standard gravity, human Marines could move like unstoppable juggernauts. Back on the bridge, new reports arrived. The Second Fleet was mobilizing. The orbital shipyards around Earth were rushing to complete vessels still under construction. The colonial defense forces from 12 different systems had pledged support. Even the notoriously isolationist Luna colonies were sending their patrol craft. "Captain," Rodriguez said quietly, "latest estimates put our total response force at over 800 vessels." Chen nodded slowly. "The Korthax brought a hammer to crush the defenseless." "We're bringing an avalanche," the navigation officer called out. 32 hours to Valari space, Captain." "Push harder," Chen ordered. "I want us there in 30. Throughout human space, the word spread. The Valari, the gentle artists who had shared their music with humanity, who had never asked for anything in return for their friendship, were under attack. The response was unanimous. From the core worlds to the farthest colonies, humans prepared for war. The Korthax had made a fatal error. They had assumed that humans, like most Deathworld species they had encountered, were solitary predators. They failed to understand that humans were pack hunters, tribal to their core. An attack on one was an attack on all, and the Valari, by showing kindness to humanity in their early days among the stars, had become part of the pack. As the Thunder's Edge hurtled through space, more ships joined the growing armada. The rescue fleet grew from dozens to hundreds. Messages poured in from across human space. Retired veterans volunteered to return to service. Civilian contractors offered their ships. Even children sent messages of support, drawn pictures for the Valari refugees they hoped to save. The Korthax Empire was about to learn a harsh lesson. When you attack humanity's friends, you don't face a military response. You face the wrath of an entire species that evolved on a world trying to kill them, and survived by protecting their own with psychotic determination. The distress call hadn't fallen on deaf ears. It had awakened something primal in humanity, the drive to protect the pack, no matter the cost. The stars blurred past as hundreds of human vessels raced toward Valari space, engines burning beyond all safety margins, crews pushing themselves to the limit. The Korthax wanted to prey on the weak. They were about to discover that humanity had decided the Valari weren't weak. They were protected, and humanity protected its own with a fury that would echo across the galaxy. Admiral Catherine Reyes stood in the war room of the dreadnought Eternal Defiance, watching the tactical display with cold calculation. The Third Fleet had assembled in the void just outside Valari space, 217 vessels arranged in battle formation. More ships arrived every hour, swelling their numbers. "Admiral, we're receiving telemetry from our advanced scouts," reported Commander Jason Wright. "The Korthax have 90 vessels in orbit around Valari Prime. They've established a blockade and are conducting systematic orbital bombardment." Reyes studied the data. The Korthax ships were larger than their human counterparts, built for intimidation rather than efficiency. Their weapons were powerful, but slow to recharge. Their shields were strong against energy weapons, but vulnerable to kinetic strikes. Every weakness was cataloged, analyzed, and distributed to the fleet. "What's the status on the Thunder's Edge?" Reyes asked. "Captain Chen's group will arrive in 6 hours. 43 vessels, mostly destroyers and modified civilian craft." "They won't wait for us," Reyes said with certainty. "Chen won't sit by while civilians die. Signal all ships, maximum burn. We close the gap." The human fleet surged forward as one, hundreds of engines blazing against the darkness. In the depths of each ship, crew members made final preparations. They were descendants of a species that had survived ice ages, predators, plagues, and their own violent nature. They had earned their place among the stars through blood and determination, and they would not stand by while innocents suffered. Meanwhile, Captain Chen stood before her assembled officers aboard the Thunder's Edge. The ship vibrated with the strain of their desperate velocity. They were still 4 hours from Valari space, but close enough now to receive real-time communications. "We're picking up transmissions from the surface," Lieutenant Kim reported, her voice thick with emotion. "The Valari are broadcasting on all frequencies. They're singing, Captain. They know they're going to die, and they're singing their history so someone might remember them." The bridge fell silent, except for the haunting melody flowing from the speakers. The Valari voices rose and fell in harmonies that spoke of beauty, loss, and acceptance. It was their way. Even facing extinction, they created art. Chen's expression hardened into something that would have terrified any sensible species. "Navigator, plot a micro-jump. I want us in Valari orbit in 30 minutes. "Captain, a jump that close to a gravity well?" the navigator began. "Can be done if you're insane enough," Chen finished. "And right now I'm feeling particularly insane. Send word to our group. Anyone who wants to follow can try. Anyone who wants to live can wait for the main fleet." Not a single ship declined. In the engineering sections of 43 vessels, human crews performed miracles of mathematics and desperate improvisation. Jump drives were never meant to be used this close to a star. The calculations alone should have taken hours. The humans did it in minutes, accepting margins of error that would have caused other species to faint. On Valari Prime, Korthak's commander Sekthar lounged in his command throne, watching the orbital strikes with satisfaction. The Valari cities burned beautifully, their crystalline architecture shattering under plasma bombardment. His warriors had already begun landing operations, rounding up survivors for processing. "Commander!" his sensor officer hissed. "We're detecting gravitational anomalies consistent with incoming jump signatures." Sekthar's neck frills extended in amusement. "The humans? Our intelligence said their nearest fleet was days away. A few scout ships won't—" Space tore open in 43 places simultaneously. Human vessels erupted from jump space so close to Valari Prime that their exit vectors scorched the upper atmosphere. They came in firing, kinetic rounds and missiles launching before their jump drives had even finished cycling down. The Thunder's edge materialized directly above a Korthak's battlecruiser, so close their shields merged and overloaded. Chen didn't hesitate. "All weapons, fire, ramming speed!" The human destroyer's guns spoke in thunder, pouring tungsten rounds into the Korthak's ship at point-blank range. The alien vessel's shields, designed for long-range energy duels, crumpled like paper. The Thunder's edge's reinforced prow, built to human military specifications that other species called grotesquely over-engineered, punched through the battlecruiser's hull like a spear. Across the orbital space, similar scenes of calculated madness played out. The cargo hauler, Persistent Dream, her holds packed with mining charges instead of ore, detonated herself against a Korthak's carrier's shields, opening a gap for 3 destroyers to pour fire into the breach. The patrol craft Unbreakable Will, barely armed but crewed by veterans, used her own hull as a battering ram to knock a Korthak's frigate into the atmosphere. "Sir, the humans are insane!" Sekthar's tactical officer shrieked. "They're ramming our ships. They're detonating their own vessels. They're—" "Fighting like Deathworlders," Sekthar finished, his scales paling. He had studied human military history, but academic knowledge hadn't prepared him for the reality. These weren't soldiers following rational battle doctrine. These were apex predators defending their pack. The Thunder's edge reversed engines, tearing free from the dying Korthak's battlecruiser with a screech of rending metal. Half her forward armor was gone, atmosphere bleeding from a dozen breaches, but her guns never stopped firing. "Marine shuttles away," Rodriguez reported. "Colonel Martinez and her troops are heading for the surface." Chen nodded, noting the losses on her display. 8 ships destroyed in the first 60 seconds. Their crews had known the odds when they made the jump. They had come anyway. "Focus fire on their bombardment platforms. I want those plasma cannons silenced." In the skies above Valari Prime, human marine shuttles descended like meteors. The Korthak's ground forces, equipped for suppressing unarmed civilians, found themselves facing something from their species' darkest nightmares. Humans in powered armor, bred on a world with 3 times standard gravity, moved like titans among the Korthak's warriors. Colonel Angela Martinez led from the front, her armor's speakers broadcasting a message in badly accented Korthak's. "You came here to hurt the defenseless. Congratulations. You found their guardians instead." A Korthak's warrior fired his plasma rifle at Martinez. The shot that would have vaporized most species merely staggered her. She crossed the distance between them in 2 bounds that defied physics, her armored fist crushing through his personal shield and combat armor like they were made of glass. "Secure the evacuation centers," Martinez ordered. "I want a perimeter established in 5 minutes. Anyone in Korthak's uniform dies. Anyone in civilian clothes lives. Move!" Her Marines spread out with terrifying efficiency. Generations of human warfare had produced soldiers capable of split-second decision-making under extreme stress. The Korthak's, used to overwhelming firepower advantages, broke and ran when faced with enemies who treated plasma fire as a minor inconvenience. Back in orbit, the battle had turned into a melee. The organized Korthak's formation had dissolved under the ferocity of the human assault. Ships burned and died in the void, But for every human vessel lost, 3 Korthax craft joined them in destruction. Captain Chen, her bridge sparking with electrical fires, maintained command. Kim, signal the Valari. Tell them help has arrived. Tell them they're not alone. The response came not in words, but in song. A chorus of millions rising from the planet below, their voices carrying hope for the first time in weeks. The Valari sang of friends who came from the void, of warriors who bled for those they barely knew, of a species that defined strength not by what they could take, but by what they would sacrifice to protect. On the Korthax flagship, Commander Sekthar watched his fleet burn. "How?" he demanded. "They're outnumbered. They're using inferior technology. They're dying by the dozens." His science officer, bleeding from a head wound sustained when their ship was rammed, provided the answer. "They don't care, Commander. The humans, they don't care if they die. They only care that we die first." As if to emphasize the point, the human cruiser Indomitable Spirit, her engines destroyed and weapons depleted, began accelerating toward the Korthax flagship using only maneuvering thrusters. Her crew had welded additional armor plating to her prow, turning the entire ship into a 60,000-ton battering ram. "They're going to ram us," the tactical officer stated with disbelief. Sekthar's command throne trembled as every remaining human ship focused fire on his flagship's shields. The energy barrier flickered, sparked, and began to fail. The Indomitable Spirit grew larger on the view screen, her crew broadcasting their final message on all frequencies. "From Terra we came, and to the stars we swore. No call for help shall go unanswered. No friend shall stand alone. Witness humanity. Remember our promise." The collision shook Valari Prime. The Korthax flagship, pride of their fleet, crumpled under the impact. Both ships died in nuclear fire, but the message was clear. Humanity had arrived, and they would burn the very stars before they let the Valari fall. More jump signatures appeared on the edge of the system. Admiral Reyes and the main fleet had arrived, 200 fresh warships ready to continue what Chen's advance guard had started. Behind them, more signatures. The 5th Fleet, the 7th, colonial militias, converted merchant vessels, and even private craft whose captains couldn't bear to stand idle while innocents suffered. From his emergency command post, Sekthar watched the tactical display with growing horror. Human ships poured into the system in numbers that defied reason. Where had they all come from? How had they mobilized so quickly? The answer came in the intercepted communications between human vessels, not orders or tactical data, but messages of encouragement, promises to stand together, vows that the Valari would be saved. The Korthax had made a fundamental error. They had seen humanity's classification as Deathworlders and assumed it meant they were merely dangerous. They failed to understand that evolution on a hostile world had created something far more terrifying than simple predators. It had created a species that survived by cooperation, that faced impossible odds through unity, and that had learned to channel their capacity for violence into protecting those they deemed worthy. And the Valari, through simple kindness, had earned that protection. Admiral Reyes's voice echoed across all frequencies, addressing both the Korthax and the Valari. "This is Admiral Catherine Reyes of the Terran Third Fleet. To the Korthax Empire, you have attacked those under our protection. Surrender immediately or face the combined fury of human space. To the people of Valari Prime, you are not alone. You will never be alone again. We remember your kindness. Today we repay it." The battle for Valari Prime had become a statement that would echo across the galaxy. The Deathworlders had been roused, and they brought with them something more terrifying than advanced weapons or superior numbers. They brought the absolute conviction that some things were worth dying for, and that those who preyed on the weak would learn why humanity had survived their death world. The songs of Valari rose higher, joined now by the war cries of humanity, creating a harmony that spoke of hope born from desperation, of light emerging from darkness, of friendship that transcended species. The galaxy would remember this day not for the battle, but for the message it carried. When you call for help in the darkness, sometimes the monsters answer, and sometimes they come to save you. 3 days after the Battle of Valari Prime, Ambassador Chen Yu walked through the ruins of the Valari capital city. The crystalline spires that once sang in the wind lay shattered, their fragments catching sunlight like tears. Beside her, Elder Silanth of the Valari moved carefully, her delicate form supported by a human medical exoskeleton. "Your warriors fight like the storms of ancient myth," Silanth said, her voice carrying the musical quality inherent to all Valari speech. "When we sent our call into the void, we sang our death songs. We never imagined—" "That someone would answer?" Chen Yu finished gently. She was the sister of Captain Zara Chen, who had died when the Thunder's Edge finally succumbed to her injuries 2 days into the battle. "Elder Silanth, you showed us kindness when we were new to the stars. Did you think we would forget?" Around them, the massive humanitarian operation continued. Human medical teams worked alongside Valari healers, treating wounds both physical and psychological. Engineering crews from Mars worked to restore power to critical infrastructure. Marines who days ago had been instruments of devastating violence now played with Valari children, letting them climb on their powered armor while carefully controlling every movement to avoid injury. The scope of the human response had stunned even their allies. Within hours of the Korthak's retreat, over 3,000 vessels had arrived in Valari space. Hospital ships, construction vessels, agricultural transports, and mobile factories. It seemed every human who could contribute had found a way to help. The mining guilds had emptied their warehouses, sending raw materials for rebuilding. The agricultural colonies had shipped entire harvests. Even Earth's children had organized donation drives, sending toys and art supplies for young Valari refugees. In orbit, Admiral Reyes coordinated the largest peacekeeping operation in human history. The remnants of the Korthak's invasion fleet had surrendered after losing 70% of their vessels. The survivors were being held pending trial, though Reyes had needed to post significant guards to prevent vengeful humans from taking justice into their own hands. "Admiral," her communications officer reported, "we're receiving a priority transmission from the Galactic Council. They're requesting immediate explanation for what they're calling excessive military response and destabilization of regional power structures." Reyes laughed, a sound devoid of humor. "Tell the Council they can review our response in person. I'll be happy to explain why we take distress calls seriously." The political ramifications were already rippling across known space. The Korthak's empire, reduced to less than half their former military strength, had sued for peace within hours. They offered reparations, territory, anything to end human aggression. Other aggressive species were quietly recalling their raiding fleets, suddenly aware that attacking the defenseless might provoke a response from humanity. On the surface, the reconstruction effort had become something more than simple rebuilding. Human engineers worked alongside Valari artists, creating structures that blended both cultures. The new buildings were stronger than before, incorporating human defensive architecture with Valari aesthetic sensibilities, beautiful and fortified, a physical representation of the new relationship between the species. Lieutenant Sarah Park, who had lost her left arm in the battle, supervised the construction of a new hospital. She worked with obvious pain, but refused medical leave. When asked why, she gestured to the Valari children playing in the rubble. "They lost their homes. I lost an arm. Guess which one matters more?" This attitude permeated the human forces. Soldiers who needed medical attention waited so Valari civilians could be treated first. Engineers worked themselves to exhaustion rebuilding infrastructure. The humans seemed driven by something beyond military duty, a personal need to fix what had been broken. Elder Silanth watched all this with wonder. "Your species confuses us," she admitted to Ambassador Chen. "You evolved on a world that tried to kill you. You have nuclear weapons in your history, wars that devastated continents, yet you crossed the galaxy to save people you've met only a handful of times. How do you reconcile such extremes?" Chen considered her words carefully. "On Earth we have a saying, the pack survives. For millions of years, the only way humans survived was by protecting each other. We're not good at half measures. When we decide someone is pack, is family, we'll die before we let them fall. When you welcomed us to the galactic community, when you shared your songs and asked nothing in return, you became pack. And the violence?" Silanth gestured toward a crashed Korthax warship. "Your warriors fought with such fury." "That's the other side of the same coin. We protect our pack with everything we have. Sometimes that means sharing food, sometimes it means sharing knowledge, and sometimes," Chen's expression hardened, "it means reminding predators why humans are classified as Deathworlders." The conversation was interrupted by a commotion near the medical tents. A group of Korthax prisoners of war had been brought in for treatment. The human medics worked on them with the same dedication they showed the Valari. But tension filled the air. These were the beings who had murdered thousands of innocents. One young Korthax warrior, barely adult by their standards, looked up at the human doctor treating his wounds. "Why?" he asked in broken Terran standard. "Why heal enemies?" Dr. Marcus Webb, who had lost friends in the battle, paused in his work. The entire medical tent seemed to hold its breath. Webb's hands were steady as he continued treating the wound. "Because that's what separates us from you. You attack the defenseless. We defend everyone, even our enemies. Maybe think about that the next time your empire considers raiding civilians." Word of the exchange spread through both the human forces and the Korthax prisoners. Many of the younger Korthax warriors began to question their empire's philosophy of might makes right. How could they claim superiority when their victims' protectors showed more honor in victory than they had in assault? As days turned to weeks, the transformation of Valari Prime became a symbol across the galaxy. The planet that had been devastated by orbital bombardment was rising again, stronger and more beautiful than before. But more importantly, the response to their distress call had fundamentally changed galactic politics. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session. Representative after representative stood to address the human delegation, their tones ranging from awe to fear. The Altarian delegate, their species known for cold logic, presented the statistics. In response to one distress signal, humanity mobilized over 800 military vessels and 3,000 support craft. You suffered 37% casualties among your advance forces, yet continued to assault a numerically superior enemy. Your logistical response delivered more aid in 3 weeks than most species could manage in a year. This level of response is unprecedented. Admiral Reyes stood to address the assembly. Her uniform still showed the burn marks from the battle, a deliberate choice. The Council asks why we responded so strongly. The answer is simple. We responded appropriately. The Valari called for help. We answered. If that troubles you, perhaps you should examine why you didn't. But the destabilization, another delegate began. What destabilization? Reyes interrupted. The Korthax Empire attacked a peaceful species for profit. We stopped them. If that destabilizes your politics needed destabilizing. Humanity has a message for the galaxy. We will not stand by while innocents suffer. We cannot be everywhere, but where we can reach, predators will find prey that bites back. The session erupted in debate. Some species, particularly those who had suffered from raids and piracy, voiced support for humanity's stance. Others, comfortable in the old balance of power, argued for restraint. Through it all, the Valari delegation sat quietly, until finally, Elder Silanth requested to speak. The ancient Valari stood slowly, her recovery still ongoing. When she spoke, her voice carried the harmonic resonance that made Valari's speech so distinctive. The council debates politics and power. You miss the true significance. For generations, the galaxy has operated on a simple principle: the strong take from the weak. Today, we see a new principle. The strong protect the weak. Humanity offers a choice to every species here: continue the old ways and face their wrath, or embrace their ways and find their protection. She turned to the human delegation. The Valari have made our choice. From this day forward, where humanity goes among the stars, they go not alone, but with the songs of Valari in their hearts. We cannot fight as you do, but we can support you in other ways. Our art, our science, our culture, all are yours to share. You gave us our lives. We give you our loyalty. The impact was immediate. Within days, other peaceful species began reaching out to humanity, offering trade agreements, cultural exchanges, and mutual defense pacts. The aggressive species found themselves increasingly isolated, their traditional victims now under the implicit protection of the Deathworlders. Back on Valari Prime, the reconstruction continued. A monument was being erected in the capital, a fusion of human and Valari design. The base showed scenes from the battle, human ships burning as they rammed Korthak's vessels, Marines fighting impossible odds. But the upper sections transformed into something beautiful. Humans and Valari working together, building together, creating something neither could achieve alone. Captain Zara Chen was to be honored on the monument, along with every human who had died in the defense. But by unanimous decision, the inscription would be in Valari, their musical language turning even stone into song. Translated, it read, "Here stand the names of those who answered. Here sing the souls who proved that in the darkness between stars, kindness echoes back as thunder. The pack remembers, the pack protects, the pack endures." The galaxy had learned something crucial about humanity. They were indeed Deathworlders, violent, dangerous, and capable of devastation. But they were Deathworlders who had chosen to be protectors. They had taken their evolutionary gifts, their pack bonding, their endurance, their capacity for violence, and turned them into a shield for those who needed protection. As Ambassador Chen prepared to leave Valari Prime, Elder Silanth presented her with a gift. It was a small crystal, singing softly with harmonic frequencies. "This carries the gratitude of every Valari voice," Silanth explained. "When your people feel alone in the void, let them listen and remember. You are not alone either. The galaxy is vast and often cruel, but kindness creates bonds that distance cannot break." Chen accepted the crystal with tears in her eyes. "We'll keep answering," she promised. "Whenever someone calls for help, we'll answer. That's what family does." The transformation was complete. What had begun as a brutal raid on a defenseless people had become the foundation for a new galactic order. The predator species learned to fear human intervention. The peaceful species learned to trust human protection. And humanity itself learned that their greatest strength wasn't their weapons or their willingness to use them. It was their ability to inspire others to stand together. The Korthak's empire, reduced and humbled, began the long process of cultural reformation. Their younger generation, having seen human mercy firsthand, questioned the old ways. Some even volunteered to help rebuild what they had destroyed, working alongside the species they had tried to conquer. Years later, historians would mark the Battle of Valari Prime as the turning point in galactic civilization, not because of the military victory, though that was significant, but because it established a new principle among the stars. The strong could choose to protect the weak. Kindness would be remembered and repaid. And when darkness threatened, the Deathworlders would answer the call. The last entry in the official after-action report filed by Admiral Reyes, summarized it perfectly. The Korthax believed they were attacking the defenseless. They discovered instead that in this galaxy, no one stands alone. Humanity remembers its debts. We pay them in full. Let any who would prey upon the innocent remember. We are watching, we are waiting, and we will answer. The stars themselves will burn before we let our friends fall. The rescue fleet began its long journey home, leaving behind a transformed world and a changed galaxy. The Valari songs followed them through space, carried on every human ship, a reminder of why they fought and whom they protected. The Deathworlders had become guardians, and the galaxy would never be the same.